Okay, good morning everyone. Look, this is to do with our goals around delivering the LTP. Headline, things looking up, but there are a couple of things to watch as well. And I also have some responses for councillors from questions last time. And we've got staff in the room to answer those questions further if needed. Okay, so from the top, levels of service delivery, we've had a sharp upswing, about 4%. That reflects a lot of focus from the various management teams. We're just shy of where we would like to be, but it shows a very positive trend upwards. I'll come back to the answers on service delivery exceptions. There's one there for Councillor Johansson and a couple of others. I'll circle back to those after we get through the headline results.
I don't think they're clapping for you, Pete, but carry on. I was, though, don't worry. It's fine. Look, okay.
A man, surely a man can dream.
Yeah.
Capital project delivery, steady, very slightly below where we want to be. That's actual delivery, not spend, but pretty much right where we want to be. Capital planning, I'd say on track. It's flagged amber, but it's a long way from now till March and June, and all trends from previous years show where we are now is where we need to be. That should be okay. Activity budgets, there's a slight decline, and I'll circle back there, but we've got two activities that are forecasting overspend or significant overspend, and that's probably the area we need to watch. There'll be more information there in the finance report. And of course, delivering capital program to budget, we're steady at about 37 million below as a year-end result. So I would like to just note, and it's a bit unusual, there's one level of service change, and that's for Parakiore. Mr. Chair, I believe there might be a question.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Keep going?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. Look, it's public knowledge what's happening there. We do like our targets to be achievable. If we know that a target is simply not, it becomes a very dull exercise to keep banging on the door when we know it's shut. The proposal there is to remove Parakiore from the current year's targets, acknowledge that change in the annual report, and then reinstate it next year when it actually becomes a possibility. So I'd just like the committee to note that. Otherwise, it becomes a pointless and repetitive exercise. Over on page 3 of the report, which is the scatter diagram, the bubble diagram, as I said to you in previous meetings, we focus on outliers. At the start of the year, everything is more or less in the sweet spot. The drift there is more or less around stormwater and wastewater. Now, there are reasons for that, but we do like to keep an eye on those things. In total, that's about 4 million between the two activities. And as I said, there'll be more information. This is the headline stuff. There'll be more information in the finance report on why that's occurring and what steps are being taken. There was also, as I said, some questions from councillors. One of them was on Atakaro Avon River Corridor from Councillor Harrison Hunt and Henstock. The response, we've got Rupert here to go if there's any need for more detail, but briefly the response is, yes, there was a low level of service response in the last report. That's since been bridged by Parks, 3 Waters and Transport, and the result has jumped from 29 up to 86%. So there's some confidence there that those things are being done. I'm not really sure if there's a need to really go beyond that, but if it turns out there are questions, Rupert's here for the detail. In terms of water supply, question from Councillor Johansson on data, trends and clarifications on when things will be available. The bottom line there is that data is available from September onwards and it will be in future reports. The trends are there in 6.3.4 over time, and water metering and charging will not be impacted. We do have Gavin here if there's further information required, but that's the headline response. Building regulation, again from Councillor Harrison Hunt. Stefan can't be here, but essentially there were 5 levels of service that were not on target. 2 of them have since come right. The answer on contractors is that yes, there are some contractors involved. They are used sparingly because they do come at an additional cost. I don't have a quantification of that, but that is the case. So essentially, this is a demand-driven problem where we're using contractors to try to deal with the issue, bearing in mind that building staff are specialist and hard to obtain across the country. And lastly, a question from Councillor Hanson on stormwater drainage and asset management. And essentially, the bottom line of that is that there will be a briefing 26th of February next year, followed by a full overall maturity assessment plan for the 2026 year. David and Paul McCaffrey can't be here for that, but I can take any further requests for information back to them. So they're the big four questions from the last session. Other than that, there's no need to really dwell on line by line. That's the headline material. Any particular information you need around capital or finance is in the following detailed reports.
Great. Thank you, Peter, for that. Really, really good report to read. Tyler and then Yanni.
Kia ora, Peter. I'm probably going to have to go straight to the consenting team. But the thing that got raised to me last week was particularly around the use of consultants outside of the city. And just for clarity's purpose, if there is a consultant that usually works in Auckland and they do some work in Christchurch, are the bylaws around building consenting different in each city? It might sound like a silly question, but
I think we've got Mr. Higgins here.
I can answer that. No, they're not different.
Okay.
There are some specific requirements to Christchurch, such as wind, various things like that. However, the Building Act is the same across the country and the Building Code is the same across the country.
okay. So around those scopes, would it then take extra time to understand the bespoke parts of Christchurch and if they were coming from outside of the city?
Generally not. They just might have to apply some different requirements, but they should be pretty familiar with doing that.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks. And if I can get those levels of service that weren't, those 5 that weren't delivered, you can just email them to me, that's fine.
Okay. No
Super
problem.
interested in that. Thanks.
Yeah, and possibly a question for Gavin around the water. So I was just trying to understand. So we introduced excess water charges to try and reduce the amount of water people were using, but our trend has been that actually people are using more litres per resident per day. So it's increased. So can I just get an understanding of why that's the case and what
the excess water charge is really focused around reducing peak demands during summer. So the water usage looks over the whole year. So we can the excess water was targeted for those peak periods to reduce demand on the network.
Right. So are we seeing a reduction? Like what? I'm just wondering how. Is there another way we can get the information that shows what's happening around what we're trying to achieve with the excess water charging? Because if you just read this as a headline, it looks bad. But if there's been the benefits around reducing the peak demand in terms of water consumption, then that's obviously a good thing, right? But is there anything else that we're looking at in terms of water conservation or trying to meet that target outside of the excess water charges? It still seems weird to me that we would.
You've asked Yanni, let him speak.
There was a briefing in the last 6 months where we show the benefits of the excess water charging, which focused around the reducing the peak demand, which reduces the needs for upgrades of pump stations and pipelines. You're talking about the overall demand across the city. There are no other streams of work to reduce that currently.
Right. And, I know in our water strategy, we talk about looking at rainwater collection tanks. Is there any work going on in that space? Or
No.
reuse of grey water?
Not within 3 waters, no.
Okay.
Okay, Mel.
With the excess water charging, though, aren't we picking up heaps of private leaks? I've heard of quite a few people who have had bills, and then they find Leo and the mayor's an example, but I've heard of other ones as well.
Yes.
And they're getting picked up, and then once they're gone and they're watering gardens or even community gardens next door, they're not over the threshold. So yeah, it's serving other purposes, is what I'm saying, isn't it? Yeah.
But sorry, I'm
No, no, I don't want to debate excess water charges.
I don't want to
today,
debate it. I just wanted to
Well,
understand.
I've got a list of questions, so I'll come back to you, Yanni. Okay. Mark.
Thank you. Just looking at the list there on page 29, and transport seems to stick out with a service delivery percentage of 48. Is there an explanation for that?
I think the answer to that is complex because there's more than one level of service involved. I'd probably prefer to come back with a properly integrated response than just go off the hip, especially since it's Lynette's activity. But what I can say is that we do the same thing in the next report, come back to you with a response, break down what the key elements are in a short space.
Thank you, that's good.
Yeah, great. Yanni.
Sorry, just trying to understand if we've got any information as to why the trend is going up in terms of the water use.
I don't have the information available here. I can speak to the staff and see what we can find out.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just to be fair, the trend went down and then up, so it's a more nuanced picture than gone up.
So I think maybe, Peter, if it's okay, can we just get like you've done with the questions that have come up today,
Yep.
can we just take that away and add it to the list for next month?
Yep.
I think it's quite a good approach. And then it means that your requests get captured.
Yeah. Sorry. Just on the 6.34, we went from 261 litres per resident per day average in June 2023, 261, 2024, 298 litres.
Yep. So I think you.
Go.
So
Oh, yeah.
really good point.
Okay.
Well, let's pick it up and bring it.
Just the only other question I had, which is we're getting lots of data now from where complaints come in. And I know that I'm just wondering, like, I was just thinking of that Church Corner intersection discussion that we had where people have said, you know, there's a whole bunch of other priorities in terms of dangerous intersections. And when I look at the roading and the transport ones that are not meeting their targets, is there a way that we can see like the top 5 intersections for crashes, for example, and then have a program where we actually match budget to actually knowing that we're fixing some of those that are the top priority? Because at the moment it feels like...
Yanni, I completely get what you're saying. I wonder, Peter, whether you can just go and have a think with the team around how we can report on what they're doing additionally to try and get those levels, to be meeting those levels.
And it might be
which
around
might line up with what you're
public complaints like CSRs and like crash data or incident data. But I know that the staff produced a really good memo around things like odour, for example, when they were looking at some interventions around reducing odour from, I think, the sewer pipes in some areas. And it was quite useful to see, you could see clearly where the complaints were coming from and then see what the work program was.
It's almost a bit like the water leaks. I think Phil's talked about it, where Brent and the team are now targeting sort of the areas where they know they can make the biggest impact type thing. So
yeah, and instead of just fixing the Toby boxes one after another, if there's something underlying that's generating it, then you fix the actual problem.
Yeah, perfect. No, I'm completely agree. Okay, so we're good. I'm happy to move that. Mel looks like she's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Peter. And so if we can just, going forward, do that, the queries that are raised, if you report back like you did, that's fantastic, and it just closes that loop.
No problem.
Brilliant. Thank you. Great. Rightio. Next up, Russell. You're there, aren't you? I did see you. Great.